Chapter 6 The Inner Chamber. I followed the queen through the forest. We walked from nearly sunset and into the night under the waning wolf moon, many miles, along winding trails, many I did not recognize, despite having lived all of my life in Zebra Nation, a rather small place. I was afraid to remark about anything for fear of retaliation, and so we both remained silent for over a dozen miles. I walked 10 paces behind her, staring at her strong, stiff back. As the moon began to set, my legs began to burn from the relentless trek. "Can we please stop?" I asked. She looked back, and with an unnaturally unwavering gaze, strode right up within inches of my face. She did not say or do anything for the longest time. I looked away in fear. "I'm sorry," she said. "You must be terrified of me, wondering what I am going to do with you." "I am," I said. "And that is my fault," she said. "I sometimes forget how to be with people. I am so often so busy with the day-to-day affairs of being a queen." "Of course," I said. "So you're not going to kill me?" "Kill you?" She laughed again. It was a loud, haunting laugh that seemed to confirm the sentiment that she was not around people much. "No," she said. "I'm here to take you to my inner chamber." Inner chamber? Nobody goes into the Queen's inner chamber except her most trusted advisors and assistants. I didn't understand. Why?" I asked. "You know who I am, right?" "I may be the only person who really does," she said. "And I have been watching you for a long time, knowing that one day your visions would start to come back." "How did you know they came back?" I asked. She looked up at the trees, then down to the ground. "I have my messengers," she said. "Now, let's keep walking. You've become weak, but do not fret, young one, because I will help you. And don't worry, I will explain everything that really happened regarding your mother." "How did you even know I lost my visions?" I asked. "Again, I have my ways of knowing, and it is my job to know everything about this land," she said, waving her hand over the landscape. She started walking again. I had to remind her that my legs were burning. She laughed again, that odd, hollow laugh. She then made a motion with her hand, and suddenly it was as if 1,000 tiny hands were helping me walk, nourishing my muscles, soothing my mind. "What did you do? That's nothing like the animal communication we used in school," I asked. "There's a lot you don't learn in school," she tells me, and ushers me on. We trekked into quieter and quieter areas of the forest, lush with flowers and medicinal herbs and mushrooms and animals alike. The moon disappears and the sun rises as we do. Huge oaks and dug firs and maples and cedars appear out of the fog. From out of the forest, a castle seems to be appearing out of nothing. "The animals and insects can move the entire castle for me," she said, as if reading my mind. "It's nice," I said, "but you still didn't explain what kind of trick you're using to make it appear so quickly, or what you know that is not taught in schools." "You will understand in due time," she said and smiled. "Listen, cloudy sky. You did a dumb thing sneaking into a sacred place you weren't supposed to be," she said. "I'm not going to pretend like it didn't anger me. People like your mother, who was a whisperer, are invited there. You were not." I looked away. "Don't worry, though. You're not going to be punished. We are never going to let you go. We do not want to lose you. Just like we didn't want to lose your mother," she said, and walked up close enough to breathe on me. "We make use of the living forest here. We are the living forest." She smiled. She was almost unnaturally beautiful. "Speaking of my mother," I stuttered. "Ah, yes, your vision," she said. "The thing you have to know about visions is that they can lie. They can show you what you want to see, either in the past or future, and they can be clouded by anger, or in your case, grief." So my mother didn't die trying to escape? I asked. That's not the whole story, Cloudy Sky. She died, but it was because she broke the law. She wanted to go outside of Zebra Nation and come back, the Queen said. So you killed her? You have to understand, it was the only option. If she had left and come back, she could have brought some new disease or new technology that would completely destabilize Zebra Nation. We have been we have been stable and happy for nearly 200 years, and our seclusion is a big reason, she said. I guess that makes sense, but couldn't you have warned her? I asked. We did, many times. She was given many chances to stay, but she did not. So, in order to protect the sanctity and safety of all of us in the living forest, one of my guards took her out peacefully, she said. At least it was peaceful, I said. I tried to act calm, but my head was spinning. I didn't know what to think, what to say. Cloudy Sky, please lay down. I know this is a lot to take in, she said, and she motioned for me to lay down and relax. I was tired, and so I happily did what she wanted. Don't worry, she said. Everything will be okay. Even if you have your doubts, and you will understand my perspective in time. It was the best thing for everyone. She caressed my face and smiled. I felt myself growing warm. I stared into her eyes and felt truly content for the first time in a long while, and then everything turned black. I don't know what happened. The only thing I know is that when I opened my eyes again, my father was there, talking to the Queen smiling and saying, "See, I told you this would work out, Still Sky." My father smiled at her and quickly glanced at me before turning his back. I wish he had listened to me, my father said. Just done his work and done his part in the living forest. He will learn, the Queen said. He is still so young, and besides, no real harm was done. He has woken his seer potential. You should be proud. I am, my father said. Don't worry. You've done the right thing, she said. Thank you for telling me what was going on with him. The crows did most of the telling, he said. She smiled, and that same unnerving smile. She smiled with that same unnerving smile and hugged my father. For the Queen and the living forest, my father said, before glancing at me once more, then scurrying away when I started to look in his direction. The Queen saw me rousing and smiled. I'm glad you are up. And now that you've slept on it, what do you think about the unfortunate passing of your mother? You really don't mince words, I said. A queen cannot afford to. So what do you think of what happened? She asked. I suppose I understand it was necessary, I said. Is that so? The Queen asked, walking closer to better discern whether I was telling the truth. Of course, I said. I should have realized that the living forest and the people therein always have my best intention at heart. The Queen narrowed her eyes. Yes, we do what we do for the betterment of everyone, and sometimes it is painful, but it is necessary so that we all remain here, and we all remain safe. Yes, besides, there's not much else out there besides Zebra Nation, I said. No, the Queen said. Zebra Nation is like a bright star in an empty universe. I smiled. I'm not sure I believe your sincerity, the Queen said, but like I said before, you will learn to understand my position in time. Anyway, she said, taking the jar off of a bottle, or it should be the lid off of a bottle. You're going to be drinking some blood spider venom today. That's what the whisperers all drink. Don't worry, it's not poisonous at this concentration, but it will make your mind more malleable, so you can speak more freely with animals and insects and spirits. But I am not a whisperer, I said. I only just started having visions again. But you will be a whisperer. You just need a little kick, she said. I could have tried to run, but I didn't want to die for nothing, and so I simply sat where I was. The queen walked toward me, and she gently but forcefully opened my mouth and put 3 drops of the venom on my tongue, and then counted to 5. The voices overwhelmed me, seemed to be coming from all sides, all at once. I covered my ears, but the noise didn't stop. Tell me what the animals are saying, the queen said into my ear as she pulled me up and pushed me to the window. I turned around to her, but she motioned, which forced my head to look outside. I could hear them all, but the voice of the mice was the loudest. Don't trust them, the voices kept repeating. Don't trust them. I parroted this to the queen. Don't trust who? She asked, and pointed me back to outside. Lots of bears this year, the mice said, growing bolder, growing cleverer. I relayed this again. She scratched her chin, then told me to keep listening. Anything else? She asked me. The raccoons think the honey is too sweet this year, I said, smiling. She rolled her eyes. You think it's funny, but that means there's an imbalance. Something's off in the living forest, something that must be nurtured, or rather, controlled. But what do they mean by don't trust them? I shrugged my shoulders. I tried to play it cool, but I was exhausted, covered in sweat. She smiled, her eyes grew warmer, and she walked over to me. I know that this was difficult, but it's necessary. You won't always need to be drugged and coerced, I hope. I hope not, I said, smiling. But you did well. It was quite a strong reaction to such a small amount of venom. But I've seen such a reaction before. You see, sometimes the venom can unlock a sleeping ability, perhaps the ability that was frozen when you were traumatized by your mother's death, she said. I see, I said. She walked forward and she placed a small kiss on my head and said, Do not worry, cloudy sky. As long as you stay here, out of trouble, under my care, everything is going to go just fine. You do not need to follow your mother's path. You do not need to worry about anything. You are loved here. She motioned to the wall and it seemed to disappear. Upon closer inspection, millions of insects were moving the stones, but a pebble at a time, to create a new room with a bed, a night table, and a very tiny window. You will have to stay here for now, she said, and then kissed me again softly, and then left. I could still hear the animals. The ants were singing a kind of chant about building far away. An eagle was quietly contemplating the universe. I was left alone with my thoughts and listening. I didn't realize how tired I was until I closed my eyes and sleep overtook me instantly. I am suddenly back in the grove, only it is green and lush and clean. I see my mother. This must have been her at my age, years before she gave birth to me. Her eyes are clear. She is sweeping the trail, but does so with focus and with a gentle manner and a kind smile on her face. She watches the birds, seems to nod and acknowledge their presence, steps out of the way effortlessly when a large dog stumbles upon the path. Nothing can scare you, says the dog. Nothing can scare the one who sees things as they are, my mother says, continuing to sweep. You don't know everything, the dog says. I never said I did, my mother said, only that I listened. I listened to the birds, I listened to the trees, and I listened to you. You aren't as scary as you think you are. My mother bent down to scratch the dog's ears. You are the only one who knows just where to scratch, the dog says. My mother smiles. They are both smiling and having a great time when a young queen walks by. You should be more careful, the queen says coldly. I could have tripped. I will be more careful, my mother says. The queen makes a huffing sound and just continues walking. I don't like her, the queen says. Most of the animals don't, my mother says. You like her? The dog asks. I try not to dislike anyone, though there is something off about her. She's hiding something. Hiding what? The dog asks. I don't know, my mother says, but her thoughts often seem to focus on something beyond Zebra Nation. There's nothing beyond Zebra Nation, the dog says. That's what we are always taught.